Art Chat is made possible by the support of the Artistics Harmonies Association. Create your next aha experience with us. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Art Chat. I'm Linda Fisler, your host, and today I have with me my co-founder, John Anderson, and also one of my dear friends and wonderful artists, Jean Pederson. Jean wrote an article for Artistic Harmonies, and I wanted to get her on Art Chat and also on Zoom, so that I could also reach out to my YouTube and my Art Chat community and tell them about your new series, the Time and Movement series. So I want to share our PowerPoint. Okay, so again, as you guys know, the Art Chat podcast is brought to you by Artistic Harmonies Association. So let's get away from this screen into the next screen. All right, so I want to talk a little bit, Jean, before we get started, about some Artistic Harmony news. John and I launched officially the Artistic Harmonies Association in January this month. And so our official launch was this month. We're recording this on January 31st. So we've been out there for a month now. The website where you have been used to going to and just basically reading the blog has changed. We've had a lot of coding done on the website. You can see the website address as artisticharmoniesassoc.com if you want to go out and take a look at it. We are now a membership site. So we'll have on the membership side of the wall, if you will, a premium blog called Aha Moments. And there we will have short articles and kind of a different blog, what some folks call premium blogs. So we'll go into a little more detail. That'll help artists and creatives that join our site. We have quick clips, which are just basically very quick 15, 20 minute, maybe 30 minutes at the most, videos that are meant to help you think about how you're working on your business, how you're self-publishing, how you're handling your artwork, marketing your artwork, all different kind of topics there. We'll have some self-study courses. And the thing that I'm really excited about is we are going to have an ad-free social media platform where you can post to a timeline, decide that you wanted to go in a general discussion or sharing your artwork or whatever type of forum. You have a forums to pick on there. And basically there are no ads. And I don't know, with everything that everybody's complaining about on social media, we thought we'd go ahead and try this kind of ad-free social media on the website. You have to be a subscriber or a member to get to that social media. That's one of the reasons why it's ad-free, is you're helping your membership dues for the year help pay for that support of the social media platform, as well as the membership side of the website itself. One more thing, while you're there checking us out, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. In the coming week, we're going to have a very special offer, and you won't want to miss out on this. And there'll be a way for you to refer your friends to this with this offer, so that everybody gets the great % off that we're offering on through our news letters. So our next Art Chat with John Anderson, and I'll get to that at the end. And I just wanted to let everybody know for sure, if you're on social media and you're following me or the Artistic Harmonies Association, when I post a blog and it has the little picture and it says login at the bottom of it, that particular blog that I'm sharing to social media is free. You don't have to log in. So just click on that link. It'll take you right to the website where that blog is posted, and you'll be able to read it just like you have been before. Okay, Jean, let's get going. Let's talk about your Time and Movement series. On the screen right now, we have a welcome, naturally, for Jean, but also want to mention that Jean is one of our honorary members, and we are so happy to have Jean as a part of that. I guess, Jean, we met online first, I think, and then we met at TRAC, the Representational Art Conference, person to person.
Yes, in Ventura, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was the one that had one of your favorite artists, is it Nerdrum?
Odd Nerdrum,
Yeah.
Nerdrum was there.
Yeah.
And the British Scrutton, Roger Scrutton.
Yes. I actually got to interview
there.
him.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Well, I just really wanted to hear him speak as well. So that was the draw.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was actually digested his talk on why beauty matters, which was really, really interesting to listen to. And of course, he has that actual film, I think, somewhere out on the internet. If you Google it, you'll be able to find why beauty matters with Roger's name, and it should come up. I think I watched that a couple times now. So for those of you on the listening audio side only of the podcast, I just want to talk a little bit about Jean's background. Jean's an author of expressive portraits, creative methods for painting people. She's been painting for over 20 years.
Well, I'm in Los Angeles. You'd think that the connections would be really good, but today it's been a little unstable, so I apologize.
It's probably that storm that's
yeah.
setting up for the Midwest. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we did meet in Ventura, and then I think our paths have crossed other times as well. And it's always been a delight to chat with both you and your husband about all kinds of things. But yes, no, I've been really trying to push my artistic practice, not so much technically as, really thoughtfully of what is it I want to say and how do I want to say it. Now that's always been a part of what I do, but I've really tried to push those things, and it's taken me several years to kind of formulate things that have connected with the past, present, and future of what I might like to move on to. So one of those things is time and motion. And I think that provides me with a bounty of options. Time, is it linear? Is it happening all at once, like some quantum physicists might say? That might imply layers in time. I do a lot of layering in my work, as well as movement. Movement could be actual physical movement or movement from young to old age. It also could be movements in your thought processes, in how you feel about, certain things in life that you want to stand up for, So it seemed to really pull together a lot of things that were maybe more difficult for me to articulate in the past.
Yeah, it's really been interesting. I love the article that you wrote for us, which is what's launched on Monday, the 31st, as our free blog. And some of the things that you touched on in there, that this is the first, what I have up on the screen now is one of the first paintings that you did in regard to bees. And I'll let you talk about that a little bit more. But for the audio audience, Jean has a quote that I pulled out to match the photo. She says, "A lot of artwork focuses on one snapshot in time, whether a landscape, still life, or a portrait. Having dipped my toe into quantum ideas and watching the bees as they move constantly, I need to meld past work with a new way of seeing." I thought that quote was very poignant. And I think I'm kind of the person that always catches a moment in time. And maybe that's because I always feel I'm constantly in motion. I don't know, but it is interesting. I did one painting where I was trying to capture the dance of one of my friends and wanted to capture that movement. So I get what you're trying to talk about. The one part that I'm in awe of is when you start talking about quantum ideas. So yeah, do you want to talk a little bit more about what does the quantum physics part of this bring to it for you?
Well, it's funny. I started listening to podcasts and reading books on quantum mechanics, which sounds kind of strange, but it's I've been reading books and articles about how we perceive and the biology of it for quite some time, and so going further with that, as far as sound waves and light waves, then we can go into things in the quantum field. They feel that there's waves in the smallest particles and in empty spaces, and then from there's this theory that time is happening all at once in different dimensions, and that really intrigued me quite a bit, because you go back to when we paint and we're painting one sliver, one snapshot of time, what would happen if we could try to convey, time and movement on a two-dimensional surface, which is almost impossible. But I do paint a lot of portraits and figures, but I thought, let's simplify this a bit. And one day I had just dropped off paintings at a group exhibition that I was in. And outside in the spring was this tree full of flowers, and these big old clumsy bumblebees were just sort of going from, and I just got mesmerized with them. I mean, it's not like I haven't watched them before, but for whatever reason, at this particular moment, I just kept watching how clumsy they were and how they just kept going and going and going. And so then I've done some research more into bees. And I thought, one bee creates less than 1 teaspoon of honey in its whole life. Like that, all that work, and they just do that, and that provides for the group. I was fascinated with that. I was fascinated with the way they move and how clumsy they were. And so I thought, if I take the idea of melding many things, one shape in many different angles together, that would be a very simple shape to use. I've also used flowers, and I have done some work with the figurative as well. In my previous work, I have done an awful lot of layering, and I love layering paints and obscuring some things and letting other things pop out and poke through. Transparent, semi-transparent, opaque paints, also collage paper. Okay. So I thought to use 2 simple shapes and something that I could rotate, and every time I rotate it, it's not going to be, it's going to give me a different, unusual shape. And so the bees provided that with me. And yeah, it was just the movement that they have too is quite beautiful. It's like a dance that they do. Yeah. And so I've been really enjoying all of this. I have one of them behind me actually right now.
Yeah, I saw that when you when you came on. So Jean, this is your second painting that was sent to me, not necessarily the second painting in your series. But I want you to talk a little bit too about the size of this, because I think you were saying this is 30 by 40. Is that correct?
Yes, this is 30 by 40 on a cradle board. I should do perhaps a little sidebar that I did a few artist residencies in New York, and I worked on Yupo with multiple layers and overlapping. So I had some practice with the figure. I had in front of me doing this at the time, and really enjoyed using oil sticks. So since I've taken on these other subjects, and I'm also integrating oil stick into these pieces as well as just another layer and another option within the series.
Okay, and a little bit more about your process when you're doing this. You're thinking primarily shapes, I'm assuming, and not so much about this is a bee here on the right or this is a bee here on the left, but more about shapes that catch people's eyes, the movement that you want it to catch over a period of time. And then I'm assuming, these beautiful swatches of, this brilliant blue and matching it with the orange yellows and, a little bit of green in there too. So do you start with a very tight drawing and then go to something very loose?
I actually, because I've mentioned I love drawing, so I will draw a bee. I've taken hundreds of photographs because the bee won't perform in front of you when I'm doing a painting.
Yeah,
so I am working for. I know, I am working from photo references of my own, and so I will do a fairly good drawing with either a pencil crayon or charcoal or even an acrylic felt pen, anything, and then I'll paint in and around it a bit, and then I'll draw on top of it, and I'll draw another one that's quite well executed, and then I'll paint parts of it, and then I'll paint another one. And so what ends up is some of the parts of the bees or all of the bees might become obscured. So if you really look closely, you'll see through some of the paint to some shapes underneath, which were constructed bees prior. And that also alludes to time and movement, you know. So it just, it all fits together very nicely for in my core.
Right. So brushes and palette knives, or fingers and anything you can get your hand on?
Yeah, you betcha. I use, I have palette knives, squeegees, you know, like rubber squeegees. I use my fingers a lot. I'll be quite aggressive with brushes. You know, I've got some brushes here that some squeegees are a little bit smaller and handheld, and I can really get into it. So those are the types of tools I use, as well as my hands.
Cool.
A felt pen that I would use would be, you know, just kind of like a felt pen that you put acrylic ink into.
Okay.
And I think about the transparency and opacity of the paint when I'm layering. I do tend to use a lot of gesso as well, instead of white until the end. But the oil sticks are enough. Oh, they're so yummy and creamy. They're just beautiful.
Yeah. So it's amazing. One of the things you said in the article, and I could tell with when you were talking with us here, you really have to know your material to layer up on these the way that you do, right? I mean, you can't just like acrylic over oil, or oil wouldn't work very well, or may produce a result that you don't like. You know, so really knowing which materials would, I mean, at some point you could probably end up even using gold leaf, but there are even things that you need to know about gold leaf, that which materials it works well with and which ones it doesn't. So how did you, I'm assuming there was a lot of experiments that have gone on over the years with the materials for you to know them as well as you do. And I know that you said that you always wanted to paint this way, but I guess it's like, one of the things I would say that holds me back from going to an abstract, if you will, like this, or abstract realism, if you want to even go that far, comment or a term that David Leffel uses, is, you know, just this, I don't know, willingness to get outside of my own zone and comfort level. So did you do this? I mean, you didn't start this way. You started, you said, I think it said in watercolor, right? So you were very moment in time. And how did you get yourself to take the leap?
First, I chose watercolor because it was easy to clean up. I didn't have a lot of studio space at the time. And I wanted to know everything I could about this one medium. I wanted to know all the different techniques, what suited my personality best, or my intentions. What are your intentions? What is it you want to say? And I also really loved realism because I have a propensity towards wanting to render all the time. I love rendering. But for me, and I know there's a lot of people that do high realism and they're gorgeous and I love them and I drool over them. But for whatever reason, for me, if I did a more high realistic watercolor, and I won lots of awards, I wrote a couple books, you know, it didn't seem to be feeding my artistic soul the way I wanted it to. And so over time, I would always ask, what if? And I'd always, if there was a rule, I would think, gee, that makes sense, or that's really stupid. Why is everybody saying that watercolor has to be light and airy? Why did they say that you can't make a dark watercolor? Why do they say you can't make opaques? And so then as soon as you start doing your history and you realize that watercolors were first done on with body paint on unbleached paper, and so they had to have opaques and body paint or gouache. And if you look at old pieces, there'll be gold leaf in it and charcoal and wax, and they were mixed media. So this idea that we had of having to be transparent and pure and this and that it didn't make sense to me. And then I had an opportunity years ago to go to the Windsor Newton factory. I had a piece, one of my paintings went into the Royal Collection in Windsor Castle in England. And so when we were over there, we were able to put together this tour when Windsor Newton was just north of London. And they showed how they made all the pigments. And so they would take a big batch of pigments and they divide it up for oils, acrylics, watercolors, pastels. So they're the same pigments. So why are we saying to a watercolorist, you have to leave the white of the paper, but we're not saying to an oil painter, you have to have white in your painting. I've never heard an oil painter say that. So some things like this just didn't make sense to me. And so I would do as much due diligence as possible to understand what I was working with and what the strengths and weaknesses were of the product so that I could manipulate them for my intentions. So I started adding gouache. There were limitations to gouache, so I started adding acrylic into it. And then there were limitations with size and glass and all that. So that's when I went to boards and canvas. And I think as soon as you do that too, and you go to a larger scale, all of a sudden your arm movement is bigger, and there's just always been this need to move forward to who knows where. But right now I feel really planted, and it's a good feeling. Right. I've really done a lot of explorations, and sometimes I feel like I have to apologize for them. You'll chat with some high academic person or a gallerist, and they really want to see the same thing over and over and over and over again. And I guess you just have to, Linda, decide, who are you? And that's the hard part. Who are you and what is it you want to say? Because art is the communication of ideas in visual form. So what is it you want to say? How do you want to say it? In what style? What mediums? And then what elements and principles of design are you going to use, which are all academic. But then as soon as you understand these languages, you get that in your mind and you can just let it free flow out. And then this kind of thing can happen, or your high realism, but I really think it's really about what is going to serve you and your soul to make you happy. I want to make some money too. That's there too.
That's a good thing.
If you're not happy doing what you're doing, it's probably going to show in the work.
Yes.
And so I really think there has to be a bit of a balance there with what's going on. So again, and what's interesting is I went back and I looked at one of my first watercolor acrylic pieces, and I had been layering objects back then. And then I kind of strayed away from it and started just doing single things like a portrait. And I find that very interesting that, 35 years ago, 40 years ago, I was overlapping things and doing maybe not so as sophisticated as this, because I didn't have the experience under my belt, but right. So there's probably something innate that was calling me. But I think fear is your biggest enemy in anything in life. And if you're fearful, I took some time to draw this out, I don't want to wreck it, you're probably not going to do as the best job you can, and let that little bit of risk taking come out to do something. You have to decide, am I willing to take a risk and maybe ruin it, or take a risk and have something fantastic happen, And so that's sort of what's guided me in making these decisions. And I don't want to be average with what I produce. I want to feel like I've done something exciting for me. Whether someone else feels that or not, I hope they do, but it has to come from me first.
One of the things that I've been experimenting with in high realism, as you say, is atmosphere, because it's something that always has interested me, but I don't think I capture it the way that I really would like to capture it. So I've been trying to just stretch a little bit more of how much can I go to oblivion, but yet people can see with their eye, and playing with values and edges. And, I have a very dark value with a sharp edge that draws you into the painting. And then once you're in there and you're done looking all through and exploring the first part of the painting, all of a sudden you realize back in the atmosphere off the mountainside, because I'm down in mountains now in the Appalachians, but Blue Ridge, all of a sudden it's, wow, if I really look through this atmosphere, I can start to see the peaks of the other mountains that are around it. So so it's just, I think you're right. We should continually ask what if, and you do need to know your material. So experience does come into it a bit, but yeah, it's one of the things that I think I'm going to do, and you may end up getting pictures going, okay, what do I need to do here, Jean? But, or maybe I should just sign up for one of your workshops in the future. It'd probably
Well,
be better.
it would be my pleasure to hear from
You're
you
a
more
sweetheart.
often.
You're a sweetheart. But everybody around here, you know, the Biltmore houses here, and what everybody paints that very high realism, you know, because it's such a gorgeous palace. So one of the things I was looking at, one of the drawings that I have on canvas, and it's one of these things I keep looking at it going, I think I'm just going to put that up there and abstract it and just start playing and just take that jump, because doing that is going to reflect in anything else that you do. I mean, that to me, abstractism is an abstract realism, whatever phrase you want to use. I don't like labeling things, as you can probably tell why I stumble over stuff. But it's, you know, that I think that also will come back and play into any high resolution or high realism painting that I make. You know, it's just the idea of shapes of colors and relationships.
You're absolutely right. I mean, if you go online, you'll find all kinds of papers written on how color will affect somebody's perception or mood instantly. So the way that you choose your colors and the way that you will blend them together and edges, the types of marks and shapes will. When you look at this piece, for example, and you see a dark zigzag, that's a very aggressive mark. And why is it aggressive? Well, things that are sharp like that are teeth and knives and sharp rocks. And so those things are going to draw our eye and our attention as well as the value. But things that are gray and blue and beautiful neutrals and waves will give somebody a more relaxed feeling and probably more of the atmosphere that you may be looking at through the fog. And if your mountains are going to be zigzaggy, that could show some aggression unless you soften those edges to get that atmosphere showing to the audience. So knowing your intentions is super important in your choice of marks and in your choice of colors. So yeah.
Yeah, so skipping between the one that we just had up on the screen, I'm sorry, audio audience, you're just going to have to listen. So we go from the blues, orange, yellows, naturally your blacks, some with your hard edges where you're drawing out outlines of maybe their eyes and things like that, into one that is, you know, more red, orange. This one conveys to me a lot more movement, almost like a frenzy, if you will, that you would see around a hive or something like that. So so being friends with you has brought me to really appreciate these. I really, really do. And so different color choice. So what were you actually, just kind of walk us through what you were, if you can, what you were thinking at the time, because I know you get in a zone and that's kind of a hard question to answer, right?
You really do. And I just love that zone. I don't know if you had read Your Brain on Music, but it's quite an interesting book about how the brain works and how, you know, you get right and left side brain and all that. So they stuck Sting into, I don't know if it was an MRI machine, and they had him do some math and some language questions, and then they asked him to come up with a new piece of music. And so he just instantly, because of practice, could go into that zone and start to create something, and both sides of both hemispheres were connecting and lighting up. Now, to me, that is so incredibly fascinating, because just think of if educators, and I was a teacher, you know, like 35 years ago, if education understood how important it was to train the brain for both hemispheres to work, and that would have a trickle-off effect into engineering and medicine and everything. And this is such a great way to bring out that practice of connection. So when you do go into your zone, I liken it to a musician who knows the notes and knows where they are and could just riff and just play automatically without thinking, where's middle C? Or somebody who's learned French or Spanish or something, and they can just go and start thinking in that language rather than grabbing these. So all of these marks and colors and so on are our language visually when we're making marks on a two-dimensional surface. And I will maybe be thinking about one particular shape, whether it's a portrait or a bee or whatever. And then I almost, and I've used different tools. Some of these tools are acrylic felt pen. The last layer, by the way, would be an acrylic, would be an oil stick, because you can put oil on acrylic. And I do use a lot of gesso. So there's a tooth there, and we use gesso to prime canvases. But that would be the last thing that I would be adding to it, because as you alluded to before, you can't put acrylic on top of oil. It won't last very well. Plastic and oil, you know, they repel each other a bit. So, you know, there's all kinds of mark making tools that I've used to draw thick, thin, big, small, rotating my paper in this case, but my support, thinking of different angles of whatever the subject is, and obscuring each one enough so that it feels like I'm not giving the viewer the whole meal deal. I'm just giving them a little taste, and they have to figure out what the rest of the meal is all about in different places. So hopefully it creates a dialogue with the viewer about what's going on. When you said a frenzy, that was exactly what I wanted, was that real frenzy and buzz in a hive. And the others were using blues and greens and yellows, much more calming colors. These colors are much more agitated colors, and that also helps to tell my story about the hive and the frenzy in the hive. So again, the marks, the colors, the shapes, the placement help to convey your intentions to the viewer.
Right. Let's talk a few minutes about texture, because I'm sure that this photo doesn't show the texture that is in this painting. Is that a right assumption or a bad one?
You are always just so right on the mark. Yeah.
You're just a sweetheart. I love you.
So I do like texture. I like starting with a surface, a support that already has some layers on it. I call it building a ground. And often building a ground that I will paint on top of will have all kinds of textures. I might use some pumice, I might use some fiber paste, or I might just use really thick, heavy-bodied paint and let some of that dry so that the mark that I used, either with a brush or my hand or whatever, shows through. The process is there before I start to paint the actual subject.
Cool.
So good question.
Yeah, it's well, texture is one of my favorite things as well. And I happen to use Michael Harding paints. The stack lead white allows you in oil to have that stringiness that Rembrandt did the under eye with, and all of that. So you can start to build this really huge, you're almost sculpting with that paint. And I really love that. And when I looked at this, I was like, man, this, and it's not just this photo that you took or what anybody else took. It's just that, you know, we're looking at a more or less 3D painting, because we do have all the texture and the sculpting that is going on in a 2D surface again. So we, you know, the photograph actually flattens it down a bit. So hopefully I'll be able to see these sometime in person. And
I do have a little sketchbook here, because I did sketch the bees on site. Okay, so those are some quick sketches that I have. I have another page, and sometimes I'll just refer to these.
I was going to ask you
as
that.
well. Yeah, you know, because they worked out, these bees, you know, I could get quite a bit of the shape and so on into it. And sometimes they'll go into a very similar shape and I can continue to draw. And then I did a few little watercolors of the same kind of thing. So, you know, they're just little references from, I have some pencil, oh, there's another one. Okay, so starting to get into that feeling an idea through watercolor. And then I have some as well with pencil.
Oh yeah. Nice.
Okay.
So yeah, so when you get in front of your support, I mean, whether that be paper or canvas or whatever you're working on, you don't really have like photographs. You have your sketchbook naturally on hand, but you're really just pulling from your mind, right? you're just saying, okay, I want a little bee here, and then boom, off you run.
Yeah. It's easy once you've done this several times. It's a very simple shape, and you can move the shape in your brain a bit. You know that if it tilts, you're going to see less of one thing and more of another. And I don't know, I can kind of imagine what that is too. But I do have a plethora of photographs if I need to draw from. No pun intended.
Right. Yeah. And I've been finding that, like I'll be going out for a hike at whatever time, and then I'll find something that looks great compositionally, and I'll take a photo of it and I'll bring that home. But what really makes the painting for me is not necessarily continuing to look at that photograph and rendering that photograph, if you will. It's more about what I saw and what I felt when I was hiking and saw that scene, and trying to pull that from my memory. And I have something that I can use for drawing reference, and that's pretty much what I use it for. And just, throw it away. And then from that point, not throw it away, but set it aside, not look at it. And then I decide, okay, what season is this? So I may have been hiking in the fall, but I make it the spring because I have a feeling of, wanting to have that warmer feeling versus the fall, or I want the fall color or the winter bareness or coldness or whatever. So so it's kind of the more it's there for me for a drawing reference, and I may sketch the scene out in my sketchbook a couple times before I actually go to the canvas like you do. And then, once I hit the canvas, I'm in the zone, just directly working at that and working on the canvas with my oils. So that's, I think,
right.
Having that confidence to do that is like the first step to getting to abstracting that.
One other thing I can say is you don't do realism because you love realism and you love showing form and getting that illusion and the neutrals and the nuances. That's why you do realism. Mm-hmm. But our brains can read very, very simple shapes and very, very simple iconography to communicate ideas. Right. And so the spectrum that we have as artists to be able to communicate ideas is just huge and immense. Mm. And so it's really about being authentic and presenting in a manner that suits you and what you want to say. And those are questions that, like I do a workshop. It's a full year thing. I call it a 4x4 because I didn't want it to sound too. I've been doing this for almost 10 years. It's like a mentoring thing where I see people 4 times a year, 4 days at a time, and helping to facilitate each person in their own direction. And we talk these kinds of things. And why are you doing this? And it's at the end, everybody's doing totally different things, and that's the way it should be because you want to be authentic and honest with the audience about what you're doing. And, and that's, I have to, if I speak it, I have to do it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to talk a little bit about your workshops too. One of the things that I think that we have in common is that question of what if, and because I'm always constantly at my easel going, well, what if I do this, or what if I change this over here, but somebody's going to know that it doesn't look like that. Well, I don't care. It's like, it's what I want. It's not what they want, and I always I've always told folks that, like, I'll be painting something. Joe McGurl, for example, uses white in his paintings. Oh my God, don't tell anyone, and it's like, so I told Joe, I said, so tell me, it's like, tell me a little bit about why you use white. And he said, because somebody told me I can't do it. And I was like, all right.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Right. So
when crazy.
When I was being mentored, I was told, don't do this, do this. And I'm like, well, can you give me the technical reason why? Because for me, there has to be a technical reason, like you can't put acrylic on top of oils. You technically can't do it because they won't work together that way. So, that to me is a technical reason. That's, to me, if you want to call it a rule, go ahead. I don't care. I don't believe in rules, but I mean, in art, I don't believe in rules.
It's a guideline.
Yeah, it's a guideline. There you go. So so it's kind of interesting. And I when I teach, it's the same thing. It's kind of like, I'm not going to tell you a rule. I'm going to tell you, this is the technique that I use. That doesn't mean that you have to use it that way, but,
Right.
and when I go up to critique students' work, it's usually based on a technique or a drawing fix or something like that may be out of whack, that's pulling the eye. So we go through a whole conversation of, why is that pulling your eye versus that's just wrong, because where do you want your eye to be? What do you, so I think that's what kind of a common ground that you and I found when we were at track together, was that there are no rules. There's some guidelines that you need to know, and you've got to be a good drawing. You've got to be able, if you can draw, a sphere and shade it and make it look 3D on a 2D space.
It is. No, it's really good. And I think if you think it, do it.
Right.
Because something will happen. You'll learn something and it'll either work or it won't. So, I mean, when you learn something, that's a good day.
Right.
And, it might be something you want to employ at a later date too. We get too caught up in step 1, step 2, step 3. And I think if you let yourself flow, it's just like the book Blink. There's a flow. You just let yourself flow. Things will happen. You step back, you evaluate, just like you said, why am I looking over there? Do I want to look there? No, I don't. So I have to reduce the importance of that. How am I going to reduce it?
Right.
And depending on whether you're doing high realism or stylizing or non-referential, all those things still come into play.
Right.
You still have to have a reason. And I guess a color field, perhaps you're not looking from A to B to C, and
Right.
more contemporary ways of working, they wanted to break the rules and have you think in a different way than
Normal.
what
Yeah.
the history had been.
Yeah. So push the edges a little bit. Even if you're doing high realism, you can still get away with a lot of good stuff in high realism as well. So
I just wanted to say, please don't think anything I'm saying is pro or con any style,
No.
because it's not. I feel like the arts are just like music and dance, and that you've got jazz and ballet and tap, and they're all great. So just be the best at the genre that you're in right now, the lane you're in.
Right.
And maybe have good reasons for why you're there, and then if you need to, you shift lanes and learn modern dance.
Yeah, well, part of the reason why we started Artistic Harmonies is we wanted to build a bridge into the other arts that are there. Now, we currently don't have any honorary member musicians, but I'm out looking and, texting and seeing if somebody wants to join us. But we see a lot of overlap in that whole process and creative process, if you will. And that we should be able to work with one another and inspire one another and go from there.
I have a dream about this. I actually tried to get it going in LA here a few years ago, but there was some, COVID and all this, but I would love to get dancers, maybe spoken word, musicians, sculptors, painters together, all riffing off of each other in a big festival, maybe have it projected onto walls. Maybe it happens in North Carolina, maybe it happens in Australia, maybe it happens in LA, and we're all sharing that connectivity. Again, here comes the quantum physics into it, where we have entanglement of things. So if one thing happens in one place, it can affect something that happens in another place, and we can become better for it, and we learn and we connect.
Oh man, you just talked about Artistic Harmonies in your own way. That is so cool. That's what we want to do. We want to try to get that feeling across and bringing people together, and all of that. Exactly what you said is what we're trying to strive for, as well as, I don't know if you feel it or not, but there's times when I look at the art market, if you will, and feel like there's a real stagnation there. We put each other in our little cubes. Okay. She paints landscapes. He paints, abstract. He paints.
Why do we do that?
I don't know. I don't like it. I've never liked it.
No.
So
No,
when
I
I
don't
talk,
want to.
Yeah. So when I talked to John about creating artistic harmonies, I said, we got to get out of this stagnation. We have to really change the way people think about art, and not only the artists and the creatives, but the collectors as well. It's like, well, I only want to buy realism, and that's fine if that's the only thing they love. But let's talk about, how do we get them to appreciate something that isn't high realism? How do we get the market to look at individuals for what they're creating versus, for me to get rewarded, if you will, I have to paint like XYZ. Why?
Yes.
Who's saying that?
Yes.
Who's saying why?
And the same thing happens in the highly contemporary circles, where the nose is turned down to realists. And that's what Odd Nerdrum had said in his youth and growing up and going to school, which I really identified with as well. But somehow I feel like I've connected the two in my own process at this moment.
Yeah.
But you're bang on. That's exactly how I feel too. I don't understand it. I collect all kinds of art, just like I like all kinds of music and I like all kinds of dance and, plays and so on. It's, yeah. And I think your name Artistic Harmonies, I thought was brilliant because, Bartholomew was one of the first to think about harmony when he heard a blacksmith hammering and he heard ding, 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 ding. And so the idea of waves and harmonies became a thought for future generations. And interestingly too, if you look at all these waves of harmony of sound and light, and we draw lines down where there's a bend in them, those divisions of space are the same divisions of space as we get if we divide our surface up with mathematics in the armature of a rectangle.
Right.
And it's not like I'm not super technical and mathy and all this, but I do love how everything connects in harmony.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So great. So like I said, I do appreciate you and all the work that you've done and the time that you spend with us. Is just, it's great that we're bouncing off the different ideas, and you're right in line with our mission and our vision. And that's one of the reasons I immediately thought of you when we started talking about honorary members, and John was like, all right, I need to meet Jean. And I'm like, yeah, you really need to meet Jean. So it was good that we had you on today to talk about your new series. I'm really excited about your new series too. I hope it gets a lot of coverage. I hope we're the first to give it some coverage, and then it just soars from here.
I hope so too.
Yeah. Anything else you want to message?
I'm happy to help you. Yeah, I'm just happy to help you with anything. I did send you one. Floral. It's a simple shape. Flowers are simple shapes, and what's really cool about flowers is that they're a bud, and then they have movement
right
over time, and then they do the opposite, and they wither up and they die. And so all those parts of the lifespan of the flower are beautiful, not just when it's out, these different stages. Just like us, there's a beauty in somebody that's old, or somebody that's sick, or somebody that is in a thoughtful place at a moment, instead of always showing some kind of a perfect facade. And I like that honesty and the realness of it.
Right. Yeah. It's almost, it's the anticipation when it's a bud, of it opening so that you can see all of the petals. And then, you get all of that beauty, and you take that in the smells and all the different senses that it touches. And then, like you said, it starts to wither and die, and we feel a little sad. So, but yeah, thinking mostly.
But there's sort of an elegance to it too, the way,
right?
Yes. Yeah, think about a tulip and how it just falls open, and there's an elegance even when they dry out. They're quite beautiful.
Yeah, and they also drop leaves. They drop the petals. The tulips and roses both drop petals, so they kind of leave themselves, if you will, another piece of movement. So.
It is, yeah. Anyway, it's just I guess thought and the reasons for things as I get older become more important. I so appreciate you inviting me to be a part of this new exciting organization and to be a part of this podcast.
And we thank Jean for being a part of the podcast and as an honorary member of the Artistic Harmonies Association. We look forward to working with Jean in the years to come. I wanted to touch real quick on the next art chat. I will be with my co-founder and secretary of Artistic Harmonies Association, John Anderson. The topic is that we want to actually kind of provide you with a teaser of what we want to do with the organization, as well as get you started to thinking about and valuing your art in a different way. Jean and I touched on the market feeling stagnant and the kind of where art has been stuck for the last few years and, well, actually decades, I think. Everything seems to be, well, this is the way you do it, but nobody's really told you that there are other ways to do it. We kind of see something that is successful and then we copy that. So we're trying to, we're going to think outside the box. We're going to shake things up. We're going to make this fun. And John and I are going to start that conversation with the next art chat that we do. So until next time, think out of the box. And again, we thank Jean for joining us. It was a wonderful conversation with her, and we wish her all the best. And like I said, we were so looking forward to working with her over the years. The next art chat we will record on February 7th, and I will have it out that week. So thank you for tuning in. Have a great week, everyone. If you're in the path of any storms or any bad weather, please be safe, stay healthy, and we'll catch you next time. Bye. Art Chat is made possible by the support of the Artistic Harmonies Association. Create your next aha experience with us.